we've got Chris Dannen from Iterative Capital talking about solving Lightning liquidity for developers.
More liquidity, yes.
Hey everybody, good morning. So this talk will dovetail nicely with Alex's talk. It's a little different. Alex was talking about liquidity within the network. I'm going to be talking about liquidity at the margins of the network, specifically where value transfers from fiat currency, the US dollar, into Bitcoin. So with that, if you've heard of us, Iterative Capital, it's because we are a large-scale, vertically integrated miner. We operate machines in upstate New York and in southern China. We have an OTC wholesale dealer attached, based in New Jersey. We trade roughly $500 million in notional volume every month in BTC USD, which is the most liquid pair globally. Very briefly, the reason we like Bitcoin is we think it's a superior settlement network. Specifically, it's superior to Fedwire and other real-time gross settlement systems. We think in the long term, it can have the potential for extremely low transaction costs. And if you've read Ronald Coase and the theory of the firm, that's something worth pursuing. It was his opinion that the reduction of transaction costs was essentially the story of human progress. And he has some really interesting ideas about how people can work and collaborate, create value on an ad hoc basis, very much the way that the FOSS community does when transaction costs are very low. So if you want to learn more about that, it's a deep rabbit hole. We've written a lot about it. You can check out iterative.capital/thesis for more citations there, but I'll move on. So how do we reduce transaction costs when moving value from fiat to Bitcoin? Well, there's a bunch of barriers. One is large price spreads. If you're not a trader, a spread is the margin that a wholesale dealer will charge you above the spot price to protect themselves from risk. And I'll talk more about what risk means in a moment. A lot of fees. These can be fees just for the pleasure of trading. These can be fees for moving money on the US dollar rail. They accrue very quickly. In many cases, you get your Bitcoin in a delayed fashion because the seller is, again, managing the risk of you not paying or you charging back the payment. Withdrawing your Bitcoin sometimes, if you're buying from a custodial wallet, can be time-consuming, can take a long time. And in most cases, there are fairly high minimums and fairly low maximums for how much you can trade at once. And of course, this is all not true in an OTC context, but for Lightning in particular, we're talking about moving smaller amounts. Generally speaking, in a block trading context, you're moving, hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars at a time. So we're interested in reducing friction for amounts that are smaller than that. And that's particularly difficult for an OTC desk because it is easier to manage risk in some ways when there's more volume, more flow, and the blocks are larger. And in many cases, payment methods are a hassle. We've all had credit and debit problems buying Bitcoin. So how do we solve these? Well, the real problem here from a risk management perspective is that US dollars settle very slowly. And in many cases, clearing is not 100% a sure thing. So if you're using a debit card to buy Bitcoin, if you're nefarious, you can always charge back the transaction after you've received the Bitcoin, and then the dealer loses there. If you buy with a credit card, you can claim that your card was stolen. You could do that after you've received the Bitcoin. Once again, the dealer's out of money. And then there's market risk during wire transfer. So let's say you buy a huge block of Bitcoin from a dealer, and it takes you a day or two to pay. We've already bought that Bitcoin and locked that price for you. And if you welch on the trade and the market moves against us, there's a possibility that we lose money. So trading in blocks is very risky, and managing the risk is not trivial. So there's really three questions that we have to ask ourselves when it comes to solving this problem. The first one is, how do we reduce the US dollar settlement time? The second one is, how do we eliminate minimums and maximums? How do we make it possible to trade very, very small and very, very large amounts very quickly? And then, if we can solve those two problems, what do we do with the solutions? How do we apply it and take it to market? So the answer to question one, in our opinion, is to leverage Zelle. This is the intrabank instant settlement network in the US. Zelle is co-owned by the 6 largest banks, if I'm correct. And at this point, 100 other banks have joined the consortium. Unlike other banking consortia, this one works. You can use Zelle if you have a Big 5 bank or Big 6 bank. You can log into your online banking interface. You can activate Zelle with a phone number or an email address. And you can send money Venmo style instantly to other people with Zelle accounts. But unlike Venmo, there's no fee. So this is sort of the big bank's answer to all the various payment products that are peer-to-peer. So Zelle is great because you can send a minimum of $1. The maximum right now varies per bank. Zelle is protocol-based, and the banks are implementing it on their own schedules. Some banks have higher limits and will let you do more volume. Other banks are just starting out. Some haven't activated Zelle at all yet, but are planning to. So we solved the small transaction problem there. And we can use ACH for big transactions. And we found a way to actually monitor ACH clearing past the halfway point where it's no longer able to be canceled. And this allows us to clear the trade more quickly. Generally speaking, you have to wait a few days for an ACH transaction to properly settle. But we found ways around that. So what do we do with the solutions that we've developed? We spent about 2 years solving this problem. We've taken it to a bunch of different partners, some FOSS groups, some commercial partners, and we've sort of settled on the idea that we want FOSS wallets to win, and FOSS tools in general. So I like the idea of Lightning service providers that are kind of grassroots and close to the community. They share the values of the Bitcoin community. This is particularly important when it comes to things like not custodying user funds. We're big believers in non-custodial wallet solutions for the future. We don't like that so many of the more commercial outlets charge heavy fees, and the users end up shouldering the cost for that. And generally speaking, I like the craftsmanship that I see in the stuff that comes out of the FOSS community. I think it's built with a lot of love and a lot of care. So this is what we're doing with our technology. We're announcing something called Escher Hub. So Escher Hub is a Lightning-enabled BTC USD on-ramp and off-ramp, buy or sell, and it connects all your wallets and channels to all of your US dollar bank accounts. So we can essentially bridge the gap between your fiat accounts, your fiat value, and your Bitcoin wallets. And this is, to be clear, this is not a wallet. So we're not out here to compete with any of the existing wallets. We just want to be an on-ramp to help serve the channels and wallets that you already have. I like the wallet interfaces that I see today. I'm sure we'll get many more great ones. And in most cases, what would help them in terms of their functionality and adoption and feature completeness is the ability to buy and sell through the wallet, or at least originate a trade through the wallet. So to be clear, Escher Hub is a separate app, and I'll explain more about why we built it this way. But essentially what the user does is they add a bank account, they tell us where they want the Bitcoin to be sent, which base layer address or which channel. They complete the transaction and the Bitcoin is delivered. We handle all the KYC AML when you sign up, so the wallet developer doesn't have to worry about any of that. And we are fully licensed money transmitters in 49 out of 50 states, not, of course, my home state of New York. But that is what it is. And so again, wallet developers can introduce buy and sell functionality without needing to worry that they're infringing on some licensing requirement. So there's 3 ways that wallet developers or any Lightning service provider or Bitcoin service provider can use Escher Hub. One is they can do nothing at all. Users can download Escher Hub and they can paste in their wallet or channel address and they can deliver Bitcoin there without your permission. If you want to make that a little friendlier process, you can integrate with us with a simple deep link. We're starting with iOS. We'll have an Android version next year, but deep linking is not too much work for the wallet developer, and it allows us to programmatically grab a wallet address to deliver to, so that when Escher Hub asks you where would you like us to send your Bitcoin, it can actually present you a little drop-down list of the wallets on your device, which is convenient. Or you can integrate very deeply. This is kind of my favorite option, or I think the most interesting option, which is you could build your whole custom buy and sell flow inside your wallet and then just hand off to our app for the thumbprint or Face ID, which will confirm the transaction and then pass you back to the wallet application where the Bitcoin is delivered. So the goal here is to essentially bifurcate the kind of nasty US dollar KYC functionality and features from the wallet, which is generally kind of clean and parsimonious. We also have some black box libraries in Escher Hub that we've heard most open source developers don't want anywhere near their private keys. So we're hoping this is a way to be able to leverage our proprietary tech and not endanger your funds. So how much cheaper is this exactly? Well, it's a lot. If you look at how the fees accrue when you buy Bitcoin the traditional way, you end up paying anywhere between 7 and 15%. That is a terrible, terrible margin, and and it produces inefficiencies down the line. I think users, just want to hold Bitcoin, so they don't really mind this, or they suck it up and deal with it today. But if you're a business, if you're especially a high volume business, that's absolutely a horrible margin, and you can't live with that. So if Bitcoin and Lightning particularly are going to grow into commercial infrastructure, we got to do something about this. 0% money movement fee. Nobody in the industry does this. This is huge. No fees for users, no fees for developers, and a 50 bip spread. So if you go back to this slide, the spread that you're paying when you buy on most apps or websites or exchanges is anywhere from 2.5% to 5%, which is a massive amount of slippage. And then if you're paying with credit or debit card, there's a fee for that. ACH, there's a fee for that. And generally, there's a trading fee that the wallet or service provider just adds on there for their own benefit. So this effectively makes FOSS wallets or FOSS tools the cheapest place to buy Bitcoin. And that's our goal. We want community tools to be the cheapest, fastest place to buy Bitcoin. So why do users like this? Right now, managing multiple wallets and channels is not always so easy. There's no central place you can do that from. We'd like to think of ourselves as kind of creating a dashboard for transferring value back and forth, or even between fiat accounts, so we can move money from your Bank of America account to your Citibank account too. We can move money from one Bitcoin wallet into fiat. We'll allow you to buy up to $2,000 instantly with Zelle. That's a limit placed on us by the Zelle network and the banks that we're using. And those limits will increase over time. And as I've said, deliver that Bitcoin to a Lightning channel or a base layer address. And if you're buying ACH, you can do up to $2 million through the app. And that's obviously base layer only for today. So hopefully this GIF works. Yes, okay. So the way that this works is you log in with your bank credentials. Your credentials never leave the device. They're held on the encrypted device keychain. We can pass your multi-factor questions through the app, which is really cool. So even if you have 2FA or MFA turned on, that's not a problem. Once you've added your bank accounts, you can see all of them in one view, and you can also see your balances. Buying is pretty simple. So you'll see this GIF will repeat, but that first screen basically shows you all your wallets and all the balances and all your bank accounts. Here you can toggle, swipe left and right to switch between accounts. As you can see in this demo, one account doesn't have sufficient funds, so the user switches to another one. They confirm the amount. They're told that they will be paying by Zelle, and they slide to complete. Zelle generally settles in a matter of milliseconds, so this is a very quick process. Selling works the same way, just in reverse. If you've noticed, a lot of on-ramps are only on-ramps. They don't let you get off. We've taken the trouble to make selling possible too. So what are we doing this for? We like the idea of having an ecosystem of Lightning service providers that don't necessarily need to redundantly solve the same problems, especially the thorniest ones. And this, I can tell you from experience, is one of the most painful problems in Bitcoin. We'd like to have users more comfortable with where their funds are and make it easier for them to manage all their funds. I think that's kind of critical if we expect people to use Bitcoin more in the future. And of course, we want to be able to move cash between accounts so that you can sort of use this as a way to manage all of your funds, whether it's US dollar or Bitcoin. Of course, it's not a straight shot. Lightning is still labeled reckless. Zelle limits are still fairly low, and as I said, this varies from bank to bank. So if you log into your online banking portal and you activate Zelle, there should be kind of a schedule of limits and so forth that your bank will give you. In many cases, the limits are per month, aggregate per month. There are limits on how much we can receive per month from each given customer. But we were fortunate that we found banking partners that are willing to bank us as a business. Zelle is a peer-to-peer payment system meant for individuals, but there's also business functionality that is rolling out. So we've partnered with one of the first banks to roll out business checking connected to Zelle. But I think the biggest challenge is something that we need all of your help with. Is we need to validate this product and make sure it's serving the purposes that we want it to serve. So if you have a Lightning service, a Bitcoin service, or a wallet, and you like the idea of using a companion app for liquidity, come talk to us and tell us what features you do want in there, what you don't want in there. Obviously, we're all still very early in this, so we can always improve the product. So the roadmap only gets more interesting, I hope. We are going to bundle this all up into an SDK for people who want to integrate directly into the app. Unfortunately, that is a much more fee-laden process. The way that we've been able to achieve the 0% money movement fee is essentially by carving off a market just for startups and free and open source developers. Bigger commercial partners are going to have to pay. So this goes back to kind of our overall goal of making special accommodation for community-built tools or early-stage tools, let's say. We'll be launching on the base layer this quarter. We already have these transactions working. We're going to do Lightning in production, hopefully first or second quarter of next year. And we'll be launching in South America and the EU later next year. So as I said, the goal here is to make FOSS wallets and services, free and open source wallets and services, the cheapest and the fastest place to buy Bitcoin. And we hope you'll help us with that. So with that, I got 5 minutes for questions. You guys hung over or what? Yeah, in the back.
Hi, thanks. Great talk. What do you? Why do you need user bank credentials if you're just doing Zelle, which is just email or cell phone?
Great question. So Zelle is not an open API. It's not open unless you're a bank. So in order to access the Zelle API and leverage Zelle functionality, we have to go through a bank. Unfortunately, there's no way for a third-party developer to connect directly to Zelle. I don't know if that'll change in the future. I suspect it won't. But in any case, that's the situation.
But so when you're the receiving party of a Zelle transaction, don't you just see that on your end?
Yes. So if you're sending money through Zelle, all you need is the email or phone number of the recipient.
But your solution still requires the user to credential the bank? I guess I'm sorry, I'm just not understanding.
That's in order to pull funds from their own account and send the funds to us so that we can then send them Bitcoin. So every transaction, we are, if you're buying, we're the payee. And if you're selling, we're paying you. So we're always at the other end of that Zelle transaction. And obviously, our Zelle account is hard-coded into this application. So you're just authorizing your own bank to send Zelle funds to us on your behalf.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure. Anybody else? Yes.
Concerning the off-ramp, so selling BTC to Zelle, how do I approve the transaction when you ask my third-party wallet about giving you the BTC?
Yeah, so that's something that would require some integration to do instantly. Today, our system would essentially have to wait until it receives the Bitcoin from you, and then once it has received the Bitcoin, it would dispatch the Zelle transaction. But we could speed that up in theory if the wallet was integrated directly. Anybody else? Yes.
Let's say I have two accounts, A and B, and if I buy a Bitcoin using that product from Bank A, let's say, it's obviously associated KYC-wise. The Bitcoin is associated with Bank A. Is there any leak so that Bank A can associate the Bitcoin too?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Well, so if we approve you in our KYC AML process, we don't have to reapprove you to add another payment method.
That's not the point. The point is, Bank A will know that those Bitcoins were bought by me, right? Will Bank B know the same eventually?
Well, Bank A won't know that you're buying Bitcoins. So there's no information in the Zelle transaction or the ACH transaction that would tell them what you're buying.
You're the only one who knows it.
What's that?
You are the only instance that can associate the Bitcoin with the payment, and you're not distributing that information to the banks.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons that ACH is a nice way to buy Bitcoin is because they can't block the transaction. But Zelle is functionally the same thing. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much.